B'ez Hashem Yisborach, we begin Mesechta Yevamos Daf Kuf Yud. We begin on the bottom of Kuf Tesam and Beis, 3 lines up at the bottom of the Amud. Where the Gemara continues the discussion from the previous Daf, which was discussing regarding this halacha. How do we view the halacha of the kedushin of a ketana, which that came up in the discussion of the Mishnah regarding Rabbi Gamliel, that regarding the marriage of the minor and then the gedol Yevamah falls for him. So related to that, the Gemara asked from Rav, what's the reason Gamliel that he holds that you don't have to teach her to do mian, and if she becomes an adult, then she doesn't do mian, she can wait till she becomes an adult, and then the Yevamah gedol is not going to be a problem. Why? Is it because he holds kedusha ketana as mitla tali, so when she becomes older, as she becomes an adult, automatically, even if there's no bia, that kedushin, that original kedusha takes effect, and therefore comes out that the sister was never Yevamah? Or no, he holds in general, if you do kedushin to the sister of the Yevamah, although generally we don't advocate that, but that's going to go ahead totally and remove that zika, and therefore that's only going to be if she does bia, but if no bia, then not. So on that he said the reason is because he holds a mekadesh achos Yevamah is nifter to Yevamah b'holchala, and you're right, it's only ibal in, but iloi bal loy. So that's why Gemara continues regarding that halacha of Rab, that it's specifically if you do bia, but not if you don't do bia. That's going to be the first discussion we're going to have. We're going to discuss that the Rabbanan have the ability to remove someone else's marriage, either no matter if it's kesef or with bia. Then we discuss regarding if there are a certain type of chareshes that is chalitza and those that cannot get chalitza. So begin Kuf Tesma Beis, 3 lines up at the bottom of the Yamid. Says the Gemara, Sabar, does Rav really hold ibal in only if that they do bia when she becomes an adult, this marriage of the minor, then yes, then they're considered biblically married, and again that will remove the zika of the sister-in-law. But if not, they don't do bia, then you don't say that it's automatically going to be kedushin when she becomes an adult. But we had the following machlekes. So you have a young girl that was married off by her brother and her mother. She didn't do miyun. She becomes an adult over bas mitzvah. And then she gets married to someone else. So what's the halacha? So Rav Ame says, get meshenish. She does not have to have a get from the second person. Shmuel says, no, tzricha get meshenish, has to have a get from the second person. Says the Gemara, as it gets into Kuf Yud Man Aleph, my love, isn't it talking about the loibol? It doesn't say anything about doing bia. She became an adult. So she never did a bia with the first husband when she became an adult. And Rav is saying she does not need to get from the second person. Why? Because the original kedushin automatically, when she became an adult, became a kedushin. So if she's an Eishes Ish, she doesn't need to get from the second person. So you see that even if loy bal, not like the way Rav answered, you see from Rav's other teaching that it's going to be automatic kedushin. Says the Gemara, no, that's talking about the bal, where she had a bia with the first husband. Oh, so therefore you don't need to get from the second husband, because the bia that she did with the first husband when she became an adult, we presume is for the purposes of the kedushin right now as an adult, because she knows that the kedushin that she had as a minor was nothing, and therefore that bia was now done for the purposes, because one of the 3 ways of kedushin is with bia. Says the Gemara, eat the balls. If you tell me that this halach of Rav is talking about where they did bia, then my tell me the Shmuel. Whereas there was never Shmuel. So they did a bia when she was an adult already. That already was a kedushin biblical with an adult woman. And an Eishes Ish does not need a get from the second man that she quote unquote gets married to. So why would he hold that you need to have a get from the second person? Says the Gemara, yes, because Ksabi holds kolaboyim. Whenever they did bia, unspecified, even though she's an adult, al das kedushin rishayin mubayil. They're continuing their original marriage. She got married off by her brother when she was 7 years old, although she had her bris mitzvah last week and now they have bia. They're doing it based on that original presumption, and therefore they never yet did. Yeah, if they would do it for the purposes of a kedushin, then of course she wouldn't need a get from the second person. But they didn't, and therefore she didn't require a get from the second person because she was only rabbinically married to the first husband, even with the bia afterwards. Says Gemara, that's the case they're disagreeing about regarding that there's bia, and you're saying it's al das kedushin rishonim or not. But Vapaligi B'chadazim already had that dispute already one time. Why would we repeat it a second time? Kedit Malik, we learned as follows. Kidshal tonight. The man gets engaged to a woman with a stipulation, a condition that as long as she doesn't have any vows on her or doesn't have any blemishes, but kanasa stam. But then when they get married, then he does it unspecified. He doesn't say anything about the conditions. And then they subsequently find that she does have vows. So we have machlekes. Rava Mitzrichem and the get says, okay, so she has to have him a get. Shmuel says, in the tzrichim and the get, no, doesn't require a get, they're not married. Why? So the Gemara explains. Rava Mitzrichem and the get says, no, they were married when Knasa Stam, and therefore, if he doesn't want to be with her, he has to give her a get. Because keeping the Nasva, once he got married, and he didn't say anything about the conditions, achule achala l'tanoi. he was already forgiving on his conditions, and therefore when he subsequently did a biyah, that was actually for purposes of a kedushin, because the original kedushin is not valid because it actually was al tanai. But when he subsequently did nisuin, and then he did biyah, that was for the purpose of kedushin, because he knows that the original kedushin was nothing, because that was with a stipulation, and that didn't follow through. But therefore, you need to have a get. Shmuel says, no, you don't need a get, they were never married. Why? Because Kala Boil, whoever does the biyah, al das kedushin Rishem Hu Boil, is doing it with the understanding of the original kedushin that was done. Which original kedushin was nothing because there was a t'nai, and the t'nai was that there's no nidam. It turns out she does have nidam. So therefore, you don't need to have a get. They weren't married. So you see, this is the machlekes. If the biyah adas kedushin rishonim or not. So isn't that the same principle that you're saying they're disagreeing about over here in the case that we're discussing now, Gemara? Says Gemara, no tzrich, he needed both of them. Why? We only had this halacha of that we're bringing now of the kedushin al t'nai. Yeah, but he come a Rav. That's where we have Rav says his halacha is mishum de ikatanoi, because there's a condition. Now, but keeping the ball, wait, you made a condition regarding there's no dharm, but still you're having biyah. Okay, obviously achal tanoi. Obviously he was moichel, he was forgiving on this condition because he went ahead and had biyah. But regarding the case we're discussing now, Gemara regarding a minor, where there's no conditions over here, she just became bas mitzvah. So I would say that he agrees to Shmuel. So yeah, you're just going to have. Why should you have? There's no mechila going in over here. You're just, okay, she became bas mitzvah. Fine. They would have been married 5 years already, so they continue doing the avabiyah. Maybe you would agree to Shmuel. There's akadas rishayim hubal, and therefore maybe you would say she would need to get from the second person. So therefore you needed that first teaching. Had we had only the teaching in our Gemara regarding the katana, that subsequently becomes an adult. Maybe Shmuel. Maybe that's where Shmuel says, yes, it's al das rishayim. But when there's a Tanai, I would say maybe agrees to Rav that, okay, you're doing biyah. If you really wanted a condition, you would find out, and you're doing the marriage stam, and you're doing biyah, I would say you're meichel the Tanai. If you have to have that case too, also to say that no, they disagree in that halacha too. Now actually Rashi means a different girsa. That actually his girsa is, tzrichi, you need to have both, because the Yetma Baha only had the case of the Katana. Baha Kamarav, that's what Rav says, that you don't need to get from the second person, Mishum Deleka Tanai. And that's how the Gemara in Ksubis, Daf Ayin Gimel and Alpha explains it, meaning, Dietma Baha, had we only said the case of a Katana that she didn't do miyun, that's what Rav says, what does he say over there? That they're entertaining to have the biyah for the purposes of kedusha now that she became an adult. Why? Because there's no tanoim over there, meaning there's no invalidations of the original kedusha because of a tanai, only because she was a minor. And the person knows that the original kedusha was nothing, halachically, biblically, because she was a minor. So therefore, when he's having the biyah, after she becomes an adult, it's for the purpose of a kedusha. So that's what Rab says. Okay, so she's already married to the first one biblically, you don't have to get from the second one. Abahi, but by the other case, the second one we're bringing over here on this Amid, where there's a tanai, I would say maybe agrees to Shmuel, because it's with that intention that he's doing biyah for the purposes of the Tanai that he did, because he thinks that there's no Nadam. And therefore that original Tanai actually is still maintained. And therefore maybe you would say that he agrees to Shmuel, that you would say Al Das Kedushin Hirshainim Hu Boil. And therefore you wouldn't require a get. Therefore you needed to have the Machlekes Rabbi Shmuel in both cases. So, but at least that answers the question that we had asked. We had said, we see that Rav contradicts himself. I said, no, the case is told about that they did biyah, and it's still not difficult to understand how Shmuel would disagree, because the question is if the biyah is al das kedushin Hashem mubayil or not. But the Gemara continues to ask, does Rav really say ibol in when this girl becomes an adult only if she does biyah with her current husband, then it's going to be a bona fide marriage, but it doesn't automatically happen. Without biyah, it's not going to be. But there was a certain story that happened in Nerish. And this girl was engaged when she was a minor. Then she became an adult. Then they put on what's called the apirion, which is this chair that when they take the girl to the chuppah. Now, the assumption of the Gemara is like all of the chuppahs, which obviously the girl didn't have biyah before the chuppah. That's only after the chuppah. And even so, what happened was, another man came along, grabbed this girl away on the way to the chuppah from her first husband. And Rav Bruna and Rav Chananel, who were Tamida de Rav Havahasam, who were discussing Rav's opinion, the students of Rav were there, and although this man grabbed her away and was with her, they did not require get from the second husband. Obviously, because the original Kedushin, even without a biyah after she became an adult, took effect. Well, that contradicts what we're saying from Rav in the previous Daf, that Rav would hold that, no, you would require a get because it's only with biyah, which you didn't have yet. It says, Gemara Omer Public says, no, Benedish, in this place, Nedish, Minsiv Nesivi. They actually would first get married, Meaning, they had a kedushin with Bia when she already had an adult, and then actually then they would put her on this college chair. So she actually was already married. And therefore that's why, meaning there was a Bia. And that's why they didn't require a get from the second one. But you're right, without Bia, maybe they would. Or another approach, Rav Asham, he says that, no, you could even say that it was without Bia. So wait a second, you should require a get from the second one. No. Who asa shleika hagen? This second guy obviously didn't appropriately grab away the collar on the way to the chuppah. Therefore they did with him inappropriately, which although halachically, yes, he did something significant, that it should be that the second man that he's married to her. But the rabbis removed the kedushin from him. How could they do that? Because whoever does kedushin is making his kinyan dependent on the acquiescence of the chacham. Because that's what they say, Kedas Moshe Yisrael. And the Rabban said, whoever grabs away a woman from her husband, it's not going to be kedushin, and therefore you don't require a get. So Amalei Ravina Rav Ashi says, wait a second, your answer is Teinech de Kaddish Bekaspo. You can understand if he did a kedushin with monies, he gave her a ring. You could say the Rabban removed the kedushin and they made the monies like into a gift, because Hefka Bezin Hefka, the courts have a right to declare someone's money ownerless. So it's like he didn't give her anything for the purposes of a kedushin. But Kaddish Bebiyah Mai. But let's say he did the kedushin with an act of bia. What type of hefka bezin could you say on bia? Says Gemara, Shabir Rabban lebilasa bilas nus. You're right. The rabbis would make his bia like a bia of znus, of out of wedlock intimacy. And again, his intention is to be dependent on the chacham, and they would have a right to do that. Now, continuing regarding the halacha of the Mishnah, I'm going to Rabbi Shmuel. Says halacha Kureb Eliezer that we teach the wife who was a minor, and then his brother, who was married to the adult sister, dies, and now you have a Gedali Yevamos falling in front of him. That Rabbi Eliezer says you teach the minor to do mean, that you can do a yibum with the adult sister-in-law. And Rabbi Eliezer says halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer, that you teach the katana to do mean. Look at the next Mishnah, continue on this theme regarding these types of cases with minors as it relates to miyun and yibum. So Misha hayan nasr l'shtei yisaymis. Someone's married to two unrelated orphan girls that were katanas, that were minors. Umes, and then the husband dies. So biasa or chalitzasa, the bia or the chalitza, which that would have to be, she becomes an adult, as the Gemara said in the Kuf Dal Beis, because you cannot do chalitza tekatana, but meaning when she'll become an adult, and any one of these two orphan girls will be pater tzarasa, because they have the same equivalent rabbinic marriage. Any one of them, you do a yibum, will exempt the co-wife. So too, if let's say the two wives are deaf mutes, also they're rabbinic marriages, they're both the equivalent of the other, and therefore either one of them, the bia or chalitza of the other one will exempt the other one. Now, but kitana v'chareshes, but let's say he was married to a minor and a deaf mute. Now, we don't know which one he prefers, which one's more his wife. Yeah, they're both rabbinic marriages, but they're halachically different qualitative categories. So there ain't bias achas men pater tzarasa. There, the bia of one of them is not going to exempt the co-wife. Let's say bekachas v'chareshes. Let's say one was a mentally sane woman and one was a deaf mute woman. So bias abakaras pater sachareshes. So if the yavam has bia with the mentally sane woman, that's a biblical marriage. That's for sure going to exempt that of the deaf mute. But if bias sachareshes pater sapakachas, but if he has bia with the chareshes, only rabbinic marriage, that yibum is not going to exempt that of the pakachas, which is a biblical marriage. Similarly, goy gedelu gitana. Let's say he has one wife an adult, one wife a minor. Bia sakadelu pater sakatana. The bia with the adult is going to exempt the minor, but the bia sakatana pater sakatana. But the bia with the minor is not going to exempt that of the adult, which that's a biblical marriage, and contrast to gitana is only a rabbinic marriage. But the Gemara has a question on the Mishnah. You said that one of the cases was if you have a cheresh, there bia chalitza. One of them, you said if you said by two, you said it's kitanis. Bia chalitza. One of them is going to exempt the other one. You said v'shtein shtei chadashes, which the bia chalitza one of them is going to exempt the other one. Says the Gemara, cheresh is bas chalitzi. Can cheresh really have chalitza that you're saying v'chein shtei chadashes, which would seem to be going on the case of chalitza two to exempt the other one? But now in the Mishnah on Daf Kavdama Beis, cheresh and echlats, if a cheresh that has chalitza done to him, or v'charesh shechaltza, if the cheresh, deaf woman does the chalitza, or v'chaletzim nakatan, if you have chalitza from a minor, chalitza asabsul, it's invalid chalitza. So how can you say it's going to exempt? So Rabbi says you're right. It's only going abiyah. There's two halachas. Said the biyah or chalitza, one of them of the katana is going to exempt the other one. When we say b'chin shtei chadash, it's only going in the halach of biyah. That you can do, but chalitza you can't do because you have to be able to say something, and that it wasn't going on. Or Rava or the Gear says Rabba. He says no. Chalitza. You could even say that this halacha, the Mishnah b'chein shtei chadashes, is even going in the case of chalitza. I thought we had a previous Mishnah that says chadash cannot do chalitza. It depends, says Rabba. Kan over here in our Mishnah we were saying that you could do chalitzas b'chadashes meikara, where she was always a deaf mute woman. Whereas Khan, the Mishnah over there that says not effective is b'bekachas v'achkach neschadasha, which she was originally a fully competent woman, and then she became a deaf mute, as the Gemara explains. Chadeshes meikara, which she was always a chadeshes, kihecha da'al, just like she got married to her first husband, meaning how to get married if she was always a deaf mute. He did some type of sign language, so hachinafik, therefore she could also be removed through the yavam, also with remiza, to do chalitza, because that's the way she got in, that's the way she's going to go out. Where it's bekachas v'achkach neschadasha, but over there we're talking about when she was fully sane, and then she became a chadeshes, which biblically she was married, and therefore loy, that's not going to help now because the ma'akva b'kariya, because now you have to be able to do the recital, which since it was a biblical, it wasn't the way you come in the ways you're going to go out, because she didn't come in that way with her marriage. She came in the regular type of marriage to the brother. Now that the brother died, the yom cannot go ahead and get rid of her as the chadeshes, which will require sign language, because then you have to do the kariya as a fully competent woman. But Abaye asked on this principle of Rabbah, he says, the chadeshes mi'ikara bas chalitza, is that really so? If she was always a chadeshes, the way you're trying to resolve for our Mishnah, even going on the halacha of chalitza, exempting that she would be able to do chalitza, but not. In the Mishnah later on, of Kobyud Beis and Beis. Mishnah says, Shnei Achen. If there's two brothers, Echad Bekeach ve'echad chedesh. One is fully competent, the other one is deaf mute. And then the Sunnah Shtei Nachri said, married to two unrelated women. Achas Bekachas ve'achas chedeshes. One is a fully competent one, one's a deaf mute, meaning the Bekachas got married to the Bekech and the Chedesh got married to the Chedesh. Okay. Now, Meis Chedesh Bal Chedeshes. If the Chedesh who's married to the Chedeshes dies, Mayas Bekech Bal Bekachas, what does the Bekech who's married to the Bekachas do? Meaning, he can't do Chalitza to his brother's wife who's the Chedeshes, because the Chedeshes can't do Chalitza. She has to have to recite the Psukkah. So what does he do? So it says the Mishnah with their kindness. So this brother will do Yibum to this Chedeshes. Now, if he subsequently wants to get rid of her, then Yaitzi could get rid of her with a get. Because, just like she got married to his brother who is a Chedesh with Remiza, so too, she'll leave with the sign language, and she doesn't require Chalitza. All he does, Yibum, and then he does a get. Now, Meis Bekech Ba Bekachas. What happens the other way around? Let's say the Pekech, who's married to the Bekachas, he dies. Mayasa Chedesh Ba Chedesh, what does the Chedesh, his brother who's married to the Chedeshes, do with now the Yevamo, who is a Pekachas, falling to him? So the halacha is kindness, he has to marry her, and the Einoi Maitzi La'olim, he can never divorce her ever. Now, obviously he cannot do Chalitza because he's a Chedesh, and so he has to do Yibum, but he can never divorce her. Why not? Because his get is not strong enough to remove, which all his halachas of Kinyanim are only rabbinic because he's a Chedesh, his get cannot remove the kedushin of his brother who's a Pekech, who was a fully fledged marriage with a regular Kinyan, which requires her to yibum to him. His get cannot remove, so he can marry her, he can do yibum, but he cannot do a get to remove the kedushin of his brother, which is stronger than all his kinyan. So therefore he can never remove it at all. But one thing says the Gemara, my love, isn't it, that it's talking about b'chedeshes mi'ikaram, this case of the pekech bal pekachas and the chedesh, the bal chedeshes, it's talking about that she was always a chedeshes, always a deaf mute. Now, what are we learning? Now, what does the yavam do? We said kindness. We said regarding if the chedesh bal chedeshes dies, now the chedesh is falling to the pekech bal pekachas. We said, the pekech yavam, he kindness, he could do yibam. In that he could do, but it's tindam and beis. What did we say? We said chaylitz loy. But we said that, he can't do chalitza because she has to recite certain psukim, and she can't recite it. But you told me that by a chedeshes meikara, that Rabbah said that you could do chalitza, and here you see you can't do chalitza. So you want to lie? No, but bekachas, v'kachas nischach, is told about where she was a bekachas, and she became a chedeshes, therefore you can't do chalitza. But if she always was, yes, just like she got married with Remiza, you'd be able to remove her with Remiza. So it's no raya. So the Gemara says, okay, Tashma, I'll try and bring another raya from that same Mishnah. We're going to keep on bringing cases from that Mishnah to try to prove our point. Shnei Achen Pikchen, two fully competent brothers that are in the Sun Shtei Nachris, married to two unrelated women. Achas Bekachas v'Chadeshes, one is a fully competent woman, one is a deaf mute. Now, Meis Bekech Bal Chadeshes, if the Bekech who's married to the Chadeshes, he dies. So Mayasa Bekech Bal Bekachas, what is his brother that's married to Bekachas, but now he has a Chadeshes falling to him from his brother, what does he do? So Allah is kindness, so he could do Yibum to her. Obviously he cannot do Chalitza because she's a Chadeshes, but now if he wants to divorce, he can divorce her with a get. Meis Bekech Bal Bekachas, now if let's say the Bekech who's married to Bekachas, he dies. Mayasa Bekech Bal Chadeshes, what does the Bekech who's married to the Chadeshes do? So let's say we can do either Chalitza even because these two women are unrelated, so it's not like any relatives like that way. So unrelated women, and he's Bekech, and the Yevamos is Bekachas, either Chalitza Yim. But one thing says the Gemara, my love, isn't it Meduhu from the fact that him, who's him? The Yavam, is Bekech Meikara. We're saying he's a Bekech. He was always a Bekech. So Hinami, so his wife, who was a Chareshes, was also Meikara, was also always a Chareshes. As Tosa points out, it sounds like that Bekech that married a Chareshes is like, yeah, at the time of the marriage, he was a Bekech and she was a Chareshes. In contrast, the first case, by Cheres Bal Chareshes, you can't say that, there was Charesh Meikara, similar to the case of Bekech Bal Bekachas, because that's unrelated. That's that marriage or this marriage. But this same marriage, Cheresh, a Bekech Shenos a Chareshes, where he was always a Bekech and she was always a Chareshes, okay. And Kutani, what do we learn? That Kain is, what happens is that his brother, the Bekech Bal Bekachas, what could he do? He could do Yibum. In that, yes. But Chaylas can't do Chalitza, even though it was a Chareshes Me'ikara, which Rabbah said, wait, Charesh Me'ikara said that you could do Chalitza. See, not like Rabbah. So well, no, Midi'iri, is that a Raya? Hakadisa. No, you're right. He was a Bekech Me'ikara, but the wife, who was a Chareshes, was not Me'ikara. She was originally Pekachas, and then she suddenly became Chareshes. There's no Raya, not like Rabbah. But the Gemara says, the Gemara continues to ask from the same Mishnah over there. Shnei Achan, another case. Two brothers. Echad Bekech, Vechad Cheresh. One is fully competent, one is a deaf mute. Nesun Shtei Achayis, married to two sisters. Achas Bekachas, Achas Chereshes. One is a fully competent, one is a deaf mute. So, and the Cheresh is married to Chereshes, and the Bekech is married to the Bekachas. Now, Meis Cheresh Bal Chereshes. If the Cheresh who's married to the Chereshes dies, Mayasa Bekech Bal Bekachas. So what does the Bekech that's married to the Bekachas do? So Teitzim Hashem Achayisisha. So obviously the sister-in-law, which is on two sides, it's his wife's sister, it's also his brother's wife, is released because it's his wife's sister, which he's biblically married to her. Him and his wife are both Pikchim. Now, Meis Bekech Bal Bekachas, let's say the other way around. Let's say the husband that's a Bekech, that's married to the Bekachas, he dies. Mayasa Cheresh Bal Chereshes. What does the Cheresh married to the Chereshes do? Because here it's problematic. Here his marriage to his wife is only rabbinic because they're both Cheroshim. And he has a Yibum from his sister-in-law, which is a biblical Yibum, which they were biblically married. So Allah is like this. So first of all, Mitzvah Ish to beget. So he has to divorce his wife with a get. Why does he have to divorce his wife with a get? Because the Zika of her sister, that's a Pekachas, is going to make his wife forbidden because his sister-in-law, that marriage was full-fledged. His wife is a suffix. It's barely a marriage. I'm not sure if his wife is fully competent or not because she's a Chareshes. So you don't have the strength of his kedushin with his wife to exempt her sister that she shouldn't fall for Yibam as if it's a Chaysisha, because it might not even be a Chaysisha, it might not even be Ishay when you have the marriage with a Chareshes. So he has to divorce his wife with a get. The Eisha Sachav and his brother's wife is going to be a Surah La'oim, it's going to be forbidden to him, it's going to be forbidden to anyone forever. Why? Because, as we said before, a Cheresh cannot do Chalitza. At the same time, he also cannot do Yibam to her because it is Achayis Kirushasai. It is his divorcee's sister because it's her sister, the Chareshes, was partially acquired to the brother, the Yavam, the Cheresh. So therefore, it's not possible because it's even though he's divorcing her, it's Achayis Kirushasai, which is forbidden. Now, as Rashi points out, from this Mishnah is not what we're asking on Rava Rabbah. Because over here, of course the halacha is that the Cheresh is not going to do Chalitza to the Bekachas because that was, she was the wife of a Pekech and it was a full-fledged Zika, and you can't say Kehecha de al Hachinafik. The whole principle of Rabbah was based on, the way she comes in, that's the way she goes, and therefore that's what he said, a Chereshes Meikara would allow you. Here you can't say that because it's not Kehecha de al Hachinafik. She actually came in with a full-fledged marriage. She can't be Nafag with a Derech Miza from her brother-in-law, the Cheresh. Rather, the reason why we're bringing it is only to reveal regarding the previous two cases that we asked from. When we spoke about Chereshes and the Cheresh, we tried rejecting. Says no, could have been that she was a Bakacha, she only subsequently became Chereshes. No, we want to prove that it must be Meikara. How are we going to prove it? Because this case is Meikara. And if this case is Meikara, since all the cases are taught near each other in the same Mishnah on Daf Kavid Beis and Beis, must be that's going to be the same type of a case. As the Gemara proves this point. Bechitim, if you're going to say, no, Hochanam here was like we rejected the other two times. Here, when we're talking about the Cheresh, what does he do with his sister-in-law? She's going to be forbidden forever because it's from Pekech that married a Pekachas and he's not able to do not Chalitza and not Yibam because it's a Chayis Kodesh Asai. If you're going to say that this Cheresh was not always a Cheresh, he was first a Pekech and then he became a Cheresh, then mi matzi mapik, you told me that, okay, Moitzis Ish to beget, he has to first divorce his wife with a get. From the fact that you're saying with a get, sounds like, oh, because she's going to be permitted to others. Because what's the point? You could say that he's forbidden to, but you're saying that he removes her with a get. Sounds like she's permitted. But you think if he was a pekech v'neschadish that he's able to divorce her? But Vetnan, in the Mishleinam Kofid Beis Beis that says only when the schar shah, when she becomes a chadashas in the middle of the marriage, then yaitzi he could divorce her. But nishtatis, if let's say she was a fully sane woman and she became mentally deranged during the marriage, that lo yaitzi, that he could not remove her from the marriage, because even though a woman could be divorced, the Rabbanan Masakin, that he cannot remove her so that people don't treat her in the minig of hefka because she doesn't know how to protect herself. But by Neschasha, she could be divorced because we don't need to have the woman's consent by the get, because even a fully competent woman, he could forcibly divorce her, and here the Rabban will not masakin anything because she can protect herself when she chadeshes, but not by nishtata, not when she gets mentally deranged. But the main point is the next part of the Mishnah. Nischadish hu oy nishtata, but let's say he became a chadish in the middle of the marriage, or became a shaita, where his kedushin was full-fledged, and the gershon's going to be without das because he lost his das, he lost his intelligence and became a chadish or a shaita. The halach is lo yoitzi, he can never divorce her. So if we're talking about he's giving a get to his wife, this chadish must be elalav bechadish meikara, that he was always a chadish. And therefore you could say, oh, just like he brought her in, which was through sign language, so too he's sending her out, which that he could do. Oh, and now there's the main point of the proof. Not for this case, but from the fact that he was always a chedesh, so then he nami chedesh is meikara. So then let's go to the other cases. Therefore, that means she was always a chedeshes. Oh, so we're going to the case of the sisters. If they're chedeshes meikara, if they were always chedeshes, so nachri is nami. Then that other case also, they were talking about two cases, the prior cases. The unrelated women also must have been chadashas meikara, also originally chadashas, because again, all these cases are near each other. That must be the same. When you're saying a case, and this is the variable is not changing in the same cases of the Mishnah, which are just changing different variations. Oh, and that's the proof. Not Gabi Nachri said regarding the case of when the unrelated women, you said kindness in that he could do yibam, yes, but chaylitz loy, you cannot do chalitza, even though she was a chadashas meikara, which not like Rabba, who's a chadashas meikara, you actually could do chalitza. As Rashi says, he says if someone's going to start asking, saying, what do you need all these different diyukim from the fact that he was a chedesh meikara, so she was also a chedesh meikara, etc., and that by the case of the sisters, so too by the nachris, he says, what do you mean? Just say from one case. Say by the case by he was a chedesh means meikara, as we proved that. So all the cases before the chadashes were also that were meikara, and therefore you're going to say kindness in chalitz lai. Says Rashi, no, that's not true, because all the cases of the chadashim that fell in front of them of pikachas, a fully sane woman, was coming from the kedushin of a pikeach, which is dairaisa. So there, like we mentioned before, you can't say kihechad al hachi nafak. So that we can understand. But by chadashes that we mentioned before, where you could say, and even that which is the principle of Rabbah, and even so we're saying, the pikeach could be kindness, but not to chaylitz. That's the difficulty on Rabbah. So the Gemara says, Ishtik, Rabbah was silent. So Kiyasa, like Hamid Rabbi, when the Bai came in front of Rabbi, Amal Lay, Rabbi said to him, my time at Tois Vemaha, why did you ask on Rabbah from this Mishnah that we just quoted? He could have answered you, no, it's not a raya. Achai is the case of the sisters, well, yeah, Chadosh is Meikara, where the deaf mute woman was always a Chedesh, but Nachri is the case of the unrelated women. Could be that she was fully sane and then she became a deaf mute, and therefore that's why you can't do Chalitza. And maybe the case is not the same, and maybe that wouldn't be rejection in the Rabbah. Maybe he could tell you, but if she was always a Chadashas, maybe actually you would be able to do Chalitza. Says Rav Yosef Tabai, you should have asked from a different one of those cases over there in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says over there, Shneach and Chadashin, if you have two brothers that are deaf mutes, so their marriages are the same, because they're both deaf mutes. Either way, they're both going to be rabbinic marriages. So whether it's Nesuin Shtei Achayis Pikchas, whether they're both married to two sisters that are fully sane, or Shtei Achayis Charashas, or the two sisters that they're married to are deaf mutes, or Shtei Achayis, or two sisters that Achas Bekachas Achal Eshes, one is deaf mute, one is fully sane, doesn't make a difference. Either way, they both are getting married to their husbands, which remains with sign language, because the two husbands are deaf mutes. They could only do with sign language. So do the other way around. Shtei Achayis Charashas, you have two sisters that are deaf mutes. So again, their marriage is going to be with sign language, whether they're Nesuin L'Shnei Ach and Pikrim, whether they're married to two fully competent brothers, or L'Shnei Ach and Charashim, or two brothers that are deaf mutes, or L'Shnei Ach and two brothers Echad B'Kerech Echad Cheresh. One is fully competent, one is deaf mute. Again, either way, the marriage is the same. So therefore, the Yevamo gets excluded because of a Chais Isha, because they're both married to sisters, and the marriages are the same level. So either way, when the brothers are Charashim, or the sisters are Charashim, that are the wives, they're going to be exempted because of Chais Isha from Chalitza Yibum. Now, but Memhayu Nachriyas, let's say these two women were unrelated, and one of the brothers dies. So Yechnaisu, the second one, does Yibum. obviously you cannot do chalitza, either because he's a chedesh, so he cannot do chalitza, or the sister, the wife, is not the sister, that's the kisnachis, the wife is a chedeshes, and she cannot do chalitza. Either one of the partners are deaf mute, which cannot do chalitza. So you do yibum. And then if they start going on a divorce, then they divorce. But says the Gemara, Hechadami. Says Rav Yosef, to prove his point to Abaya, what's the case talking about? If you think it's talking about where they were originally fully competent and then became a chedesh, would he be able to divorce her? But Vatnan, this is the Mishnah we quoted before. Nishtatis lo yaitzi, if she became mentally deranged, he cannot divorce her. Okay, but the main point is in this next one. Nischadesh who in Nishtatis became a chedesh, which means originally was pekech and became a chedesh, or in Nishtatis became mentally deranged, lo yaitzi olam, so he can never divorce her. So obviously it cannot be a case of divorcing her, because he wouldn't be able to divorce her, became a chedesh during the marriage. Rather, obviously, a chedesh mikara, that he was always a chedesh. Oh, madehin chedesh mikara, from the fact that in this case, where we're talking about the two brothers or the two sisters, and we're describing the two brothers, which that must be talking about that he was always a chedesh. So in inami, the gear says in he, not in who. In he nami chedesh mikar must be the equivalent case of the two sisters, that their chedeshes must be they also were always originally chedeshes. Aha, what does it say over there? If they were unrelated, the halacha is yechneisu, the brother could do yibum, but the dik is yechneisin, they can do yibum, but yachloitzu loy, but they cannot do chalitza. To the rab, that refutes rabba, it's a refutation. You see clearly, even when it's chadashes me'ikara, you cannot do yibum. So it must be again like the first teretz the Gemara gave. You can't say the teretz of rabba that it would depend on if she was a charasha meikara or only pick chizal b'sefes chashes, because that's rejected. And you see, always you cannot do chalitza. Now look at the Mishnah that we said kitana v'charesha b'chulu. Now let's say the two wives that he was married to, one was a minor, one was a deaf mute. Then we said one will not exempt the other, although they're both rabbinic marriages. It doesn't make a difference. We don't know who is his primary wife. Now Amar Rav Nachman, he says Ashkachase l'Rav Ada bar Hava. I encountered Rav Ada bar Hava, u'l'Rav Chana chasna and his son Rav Chana. The Yasvev v'kamakava akavasa. They were gathering students around themselves, which the word of kibui, of like mikvah, of gathering, they were coming to hear their words. Or another gear says not what a vav, but rather the makwa akhasa. They were actually responding questions one to the other. And they were doing this b'shukah de b'madisa in the marketplace in B'madisa. They were saying, not this we learned in the Mishnah. Katana v'chadesha. So let's say one wife was a minor, one was a deaf mute. So our Mishnah says, in biyas achas men b'teres tzarasa. The bia of one of them, if the Yevamos does it one of them, won't exempt necessarily the co-wife. So on that they qualified and said, Hanimila, when we say there's only the nafli ma'achav bekech, only if that this woman is falling to yibum from his brother that's a bekech, that's a fully competent man. There delayedin, we don't know, did he prefer, is a primary marriage with the minor girl? Did he prefer primarily with the deaf mute? And since we don't know, one's not going to exempt the other, as the Gemara explains. Do we say he preferred the marriage with the minor because the asl chaldeya, ultimately she's going to come to an age where she's going to become intelligent. So maybe she's the primary. Or maybe prefer the chareshes because right now she's an adult and he could have regular marital relations, although she's not fully sane, but fine, he might prefer that one. That's where the suffix was. But let's say that these two wives are falling from the brother who died, that was he himself was a chedesh. Then they said vade b'chadeshes nichli. Then most definitely that chedesh for sure prefer an adult chedesh's wife. The bas biyahi ubas minahi, because she could have bia, they could already have intimacy, and it's also his same type. He's also chedesh. So then actually the bia with the chedesh is actually as the yavam would actually exempt the wife. That's a ketan. But that's he said. And I said to them, no, even if they fell from the brother who's a chedesh who he died, you wouldn't know definitively that he would prefer that chedesh's basmina, because maybe he would prefer the ketan who's going to come to a das and going to become a type of wife that would be superior to that in that of the chedesh's, and therefore even there you would say the halacha of the Mishnah that im bias achzim and pateris to us.